Is this thing working? Are we live? It looks like we're live. What's happening, everybody? Everybody's having a fantastic whatever day you're watching this. As if this is your first time. Is this my first time doing the show? If this is your first time with us at Two Wheel Tuesdays, thank you very much for stopping by. This is a background noise generator, basically focusing on motorcycles, motorcycle lifestyle type stuff, and all that comes with it. I do a ride and review. I'm going to try to do some more coming into February. I'm going to try to do about 4 or 5 per month. And so the ride reviews that I've got coming up, I want to talk about those. I'm going to be solidifying those here really soon. And this is my opportunity to interact with you guys. So if you want to see me ride a motorcycle and talk about it, run over to Stubbs Cycles website. Take a look at their inventory. If you see something that catches your eye, let me know. I'll see if I can't snag the keys and take it for a spin. They've got a Harley Davidson dealership and a Honda Suzuki dealership. Good used inventory, so check them out. Let me know what you think. So with this chat, I want to talk a little bit about cafe racers. And I understand that a lot of folks out there are big fans of these bikes, but they're going away. At least manufacturers aren't supporting them the way that they used to. It used to be you had motorcycles like, well, Triumph would be a big first one that comes to mind. You would have the Thruxton. I mean, that was the poster child for cafe racer. But you also had motorcycles like the Speed Triple Double R that was recently discontinued. You've got the Kawasaki Z900 RS Cafe, my beloved bike, discontinued as well. You've got other cafe style bikes and very cool retro-ish fully fared bikes, I should say, that are either not coming to the United States, or if you wanted to do a conversion, are extremely expensive to do so. That would include the Hawk 11, which for the life of me, Honda will not bring that bike to the United States, and I have monies to spend on that thing. But you also have motorcycles like the XSR 900 GP that won't ever make it to the States. You can get an XSR 900, but you can't get the GP. And if you wanted to, it'd be very expensive to do it. About the only manufacturer that is really holding true to this retro cafe or neo cafe aesthetic is MV Agusta and, well, you nailed it, Royal Enfield. So I want to talk about what is coming from Royal Enfield. The new 750 Continental GT is promising to steal my heart the way 650 did. So yeah, there's that bike. And for very little money by comparison, you can have the actual experience of cafe racer and not have one of these neo classic ultra hot rodded type of things that you would find. Even the Thruxton is a funny bike for me. So I want to talk about some bikes individually. I'm going to catch up with you guys. This is my opportunity to interact with y'all. And then I'm going to dive into the specific bikes that I wanted to get to in this chat. So Marco Muay Thai is in. Got the high five. Hard Rock is in. Good evening. Marco is saying trucks are better. Trucks are better. I agree. I'm a truck guy more than a car guy at heart. Sam saying, any thoughts on e-bikes? I don't. Look, I like the little ones. I like the city bikes, but an actual e-motorcycle, when Energencia went out, the soul of the e-bike went away. And with Livewire being, well, Livewire, I don't even think Livewire sold 200 units this year. No, I mean last year. Sorry, in all of 2024. It's bad look. They're not good. An e-bike, city bike, very good because it accomplishes its goal absolutely flawlessly. E-bike motorcycle is a real problem because it takes way too long to charge them. And once you're done with your range, you're done for the day. You can't just refuel it. So that's a real issue for me. Sam saying, honestly, been keen on an e-bike. I thought about building my own 35cc motorbike. Well, that's the thing. A small e-bike is really good. The only downside to them, don't get a cheap one. One of the issues with small e-bikes is some of them run on lithium ion or lithium polymer batteries. You have to have a LiFePO4, which is the lithium iron batteries, those don't blow up in spectacular fashion the way that lipo batteries do. And the problem is that when they do enter into a condition of rapid thermal decomposition, it's right underneath your giblets. So yeah, your goose is cooked if that thing catches on fire. Just Google e-bike spontaneously combusting and you'll have many moons worth of entertainment to convince you that it might not be the best idea. I need to get my coffee from the machine. Oh, and I overdid that one. So getting to it, guys, one of the key takeaways for me when it comes to the cafe racer aesthetic is that there's a lot of manufacturers that had their own take on what cafe racer meant. MV Agusta Super Veloce was and is a criminally pretty motorcycle. And I mean, absolutely stunning thing to look at. But it's also stunning to try to cut a check for. Those things are ridiculously expensive. And people will spend the money on that bike because it is an MV Agusta. But one of the key weird things about, well, Triumph of all things, is that when they released the Speed Triple Double R into the world, it was a motorcycle that upon initial inspection, the first thing that you see is just a really pretty motorcycle, but it's still a sport naked. And the problem with that is, yeah, it's a cafe-ish aesthetic, but it's on a sport naked and it was expensive to say the least. I mean, the going rate on one of those bikes before the great reduction in cost was $22,000. And that's if you covered a pretty decent deal on one. And that's a lot of money to spend on a bike that doesn't really have a home. I mean, to spend that kind of money on a motorcycle, it has to have some type of heritage. It's got to have some kind of racing pedigree, or else you're going to have a really hard time convincing folks to spend that kind of money on that motorcycle, even if it's a really good bike, which it was. Anyway, great motorcycle. But the problem is that if you want a sport bike with clip-ons, there are other options available. And $21,000 buys you a hell of a lot of BMW, Suzuki GSX-R 1000, ZX-10R, R1, arguably the best sounding motorcycle that has ever been made with 4 cylinders. And so you kind of get the idea here. That kind of money is just really hard to part ways with. Oh, and let's also not forget that the dealer support, or at least the dealer network, is not all that deep. So if you had a problem with one and you weren't anywhere near your Triumph dealership, you're kind of up a creek, so to speak. So because of that, a lot of folks just weren't players on that motorcycle. And the other side to that bike, still talking about the Speed Triple Double R, is that it was unnecessarily laden with technology. That bike had fully adjustable Olin suspension and all that kind of, all that kind of stuff. That's an issue, honestly, for a lot of folks. Most guys that are buying a motorcycle nowadays, they want some level of technology, but they want it as an option, especially when it comes to the fully adjustable suspension and everything that comes with that. I think that a lot of folks would have been real happy with that bike with just a normal suspension setup, the way that every other motorcycle comes from the factory, and have that motorcycle cost $3,000 or $4,000 less. Now, that being said, they still do make the Speed Triple. I always dyslexify those. They do still make the Speed Triple RS, and the RS for 2025 has an even more insane suspension package in that you can program it with your own weight, and the bike will adjust and automatically adjust based on how aggressive you're riding the thing, but it'll adjust preload and everything for you for your weight. I mean, it's Olin, so you know it's good. That's just a whole lot of technology that I think folks really aren't asking for in a motorcycle like that. Now, if you were to put that technology in a fully faired machine making somewhere around 200 horsepower, well, then you'd get my attention. And then I might be a player even at $18,000 or $19,000. But when you start to breach that $20,000 barrier, you have to have racing chops, or you're just spending money for aesthetics at that point. And that's really more the problem, is that most guys are not going to be able to ride a motorcycle anywhere near its limits. And to be honest with you, we're talking about leader class power here. You can't ride that thing at half of its capacity on the street. And well, you can, but I mean, it's just like there's some within reason type of stuff going on here that, well, I mean, it's going to be wasted, I guess, is the point that I'm trying to make with that technology. It's cool. It's neat. And if you're up in the canyons, it's a lot of fun. Up in the mountains, it's kind of neat. Hitting your favorite B and C roads, it's kind of fun. But I mean, you can only ride to the limitations of the tarmac and the tires and your skill set. And I doubt either one of those is going to tax that system all that much. So let me dive back into you guys. Sam saying, I've heard the Hemi is back in the trucks for 26. Don't even know what that means, man. Motorcycle. I don't really, I'm so done with Dodge. I couldn't care if they put a Hemi in it. They can put a jet engine in that thing. I was on the phone with a good friend of mine. I do still keep up with this stuff. And he was telling me that, yeah, they need to do something because that Hurricane 6 is coming back for all kinds of issues right now. Sovereign saying, hey, B, what's up? Got the bald guy with the flex and the shades. I like it. What is up, Skids? Sovereign saying, how'd you like Desperado Riff? It's good stuff, man. Keep it up. Let's see. Everybody checking in. I like it. So, yeah, the main thing here is, when it comes to the cafe aesthetic, Triumph did a great job with the Thruxton. So I don't want to wear out the Speed Triple Double R. It's gone. And it should have been a different bike. My whole premise with that motorcycle is good effort, put a full fairing on it, give it more horsepower. Nobody cares about torque. Just give it, it's 1200 cc triple. It's going to have torque. Okay. Let the thing rev out on the big end, have it made about 200 horsepower, have a regular suspension model. You can have an R, an RS, and a double R if you want, and just follow your street triple business model. And I think you'd be just fine with that bike. And I think that motorcycle would allow Triumph to come into the leader class verse, if you will. And have a bike that's instantly competitive, and it's going to be cool and unique, which is what a Triumph is. But and a bit of a return to like the T595 and 955i era of bikes. I think once they do that, they'll be in pretty good shape. But they got to do something. The second bike from Triumph, it's taken me 13 minutes and 27 seconds to get here, is we got to acknowledge that Triumph did discontinue the Thruxton last year. And I'm just curious, did anybody even notice? The problem with the Thruxton, and it's one of my favorite motorcycles ever to ride, but the problem with the Thruxton is the price. That thing is, what is it, $15,000, $16,000? That thing was so overpriced for the performance envelope that it delivers. And I'm sorry, but there's a lot of folks that would agree with that, as there are still Thruxtons sitting on the showroom floors of dealerships that they can't sell. So it's one of these things where, I mean, would I take one if it was offered to me? Yeah, sure. It's a nice bike. But I mean, I've got my Bonneville T120 that I've personally modified and tuned and done everything with. And that's a damn fun bike to ride. So, in its true cafe style, not I don't want to call it a derived, but you get the idea. I mean, it's, if you modify a Bonneville T120 or a T100 to be more rocker style cafe, to me, that's more cafe than the Thruxton in a way. Although there's no denying the Thruxton with that optional fairing is really pretty. Anyway, getting back to it, the other bikes that I wanted to talk about, because I just don't want to wail on, Triumph getting rid of motorcycles. Let's talk about bikes that do exist in the world. And one of them that's coming very quickly to a dealership near you is a bike that I need to stay the hell away from. Like, I don't need to be within sniffing distance of this thing. That is the new 750 Continental GT, or any Royal Enfield with a 750cc air and oil cooled parallel twin, because that motorcycle is the sweetest machine that I have ever ridden to just ride as a motorcycle. And you might say, well, what about the Bonneville that you have? Yeah, even that one. Yeah. My Bonneville makes, for practical purposes, my Bonneville makes double the horsepower and torque that 650 Royal Enfield makes. Don't care. The 650 Continental GT, the riding position is very cafe. It's got nice little boop in the little, just a little nudge up for the rear foot pegs, a little bit of an adjustment down for the fronts. It is as sweet as you can imagine a motorcycle to be to ride. It will cruise at 80 or 90 miles an hour, no problem. It doesn't accelerate like crazy, but that's not why we're here. That motorcycle is such an awesome vintage experience. And it is vintage in its build, okay? That motorcycle, if you were to take that bike and transport it to 1966 or 1968, it would fit right in. You could ride through town, nobody would notice. That's how true to form the Royal Enfield is. And so for me personally, I like the Royal Enfield more than the Triumph. Okay, I said it. Now, that doesn't mean I would go trade in my Bonnie for a Royal Enfield 750. What it means is, if you have any other motorcycle in your fleet, or if you don't have a bike at all, and you like that cafe racer aesthetic, you like that original classic riding experience with the sounds and the ticking, and look, an air-cooled engine just sounds different. You hear, because there's no water jackets or anything like that, the way that when those things hit a power stroke, it sounds different. It resonates differently. It's a very organic feel. It's a very organic sound. To be able to have that experience, it might be worth the $7,000 that you're going to spend on that motorcycle. And that's why I keep saying it needs to stay the hell away from me, because let me show y'all a picture of what that thing is supposed to look like. Let me get this thing pulled. Royal Enfield 750 Continental. See if I can get an image of this thing. Okay, so this is why this is why that bike is a hell of a problem for yours truly. Is that showing up? Yeah. There are rumors that it is going to hold very true. Hang on. Yeah, here we go. This is a 650 with a fairing, but hold on. Yeah, anyway, you get the idea. I'm having a real hard time not just running down there and putting money on this thing. Now, this is the GT 750. It's a rendering. This is not what the bike is going to look like, but you can envision it will have a fairing and it will have a cowl. And so anyway, that's a rendering, so it's not really what the bike's going to look like. But I'm telling you right now, it is going to be, it's going to make about 10 more horsepower than the 650, which is to say around 62 to 67 horsepower is what they're estimating. And if that's the case, then let me tell you what kind of problem this is. That means that that bike is going to have the same power as the T100, and it's going to weigh about 60 pounds less. And it's got a 6-speed transmission, and it's got some pretty long legs. So you'll be able to cruise at 90 or 100 miles an hour on this little Royal Enfield the way that you can cruise at 90 or 100 miles an hour on a T100. Well, no, actually a T120. It's going to have T120-esque performance at a fraction of the cost. Now, it's not going to hang with the Speed Twin, but that's not the point. The Speed Twin is, I mean, by the way you look at it, it's almost double the price. And for how you ride motorcycles like this, you're not going to run out of the life of a Royal Enfield 750 Conti. So just saying, something to think about, if nothing else. It's going to be a hell of a bike. I mean, I can't keep, I mean, I know I'm just like losing my mind over this. But yeah, there are some renderings. Like here's one of them on Reddit. Oh, I mean, if it comes to life, it's got a good looking bike. Anyway, so no, the Cafe Racer isn't dead. That is not a hold on a second. Having telephone issues here. The Cafe Racer isn't dead. The aesthetic isn't dead either. Royal Enfield keeps gaining market share. And they do it because they're delivering an actual real vintage riding experience. And nobody else is building a bike like that, except for maybe Honda with the Dax or the Monkey. With one of those two bikes or the Trail. I mean, any of those bikes is going to be a vintage riding experience, but I'm talking about a vintage motorcycle experience. I don't know of anybody else that's doing it any better than Royal Enfield. Let's see. Let's see. Honda Trail. Honda Trails are fun. Trikes can get away with just a Class C. I don't think you need a motorcycle endorsement for that, even though they are still considered endorsable. You don't have to have one for those. It's going to say, wonder if the 750 will make it to the Meteor, the Cruiser. It will. That 750 is taking the place of the 650 engine. Hard Rock saying sinister looks. Yeah. Sovereign's Comcast is acting up. Yep. Skids. Yeah, both Harley Davidson and Indian had their 2025 releases. Yes, they did. I'm looking forward to getting a bagger this year. I'm riding everything before I make my decision, of course. Yeah, check it out. So, yeah, Indian, I don't know all the bikes, but Indian's got some really slick looking bikes. By the way, Hard Rock, I am going to try to get that bobber. I'm going to try to get the Indian bobber out for a ride. Oh, so upcoming bikes. Let me go ahead and get into this. Oh, wait, before I do that, Skid saying the Indian now increased the size. Yep, they went to 112 cubic inches. And yeah, 125 horsepower, 130 foot-pounds of torque. That thing is a rocket, dude. I mean, legit horsepower and torque numbers coming out of that Indian. It's going to make it very difficult to, like, your first stop might not even be a Harley Davidson dealership anymore with Indian coming out with power and torque like that. But that being said, so upcoming bikes, there is, speaking of Harley Davidson, there is a Pan America that is at Stubbs Harley that I'm going to try to get a leg over on, possibly maybe next week. It depends on, man, our weather has been terrible down here, but possibly next week. I'm also going to try to get on to the Indian bobber. That thing is calling my name like crazy. So those are two bikes that are coming up. And the other one, hold on a second. Let me pull up the inventory real quick. Because there's quite a few bikes in inventory right now. Let me get this pulled up for you real quick. And no, don't get any crazy ideas. The Royal Enfield's not up yet. I need to find out if that bike sold. I really like that bike, guys. And look, here's the thing with me, and I want to make this real clear. I am completely and utterly egoless when it comes to motorcycles. I don't care if it's a scooter. I don't care if it's I don't care what it is. I love riding motorcycles. So it drives some people crazy. Why don't you, roll race the GSXR 1000 or, do this or do that? It's like, I couldn't care less. I'm having too much fun just being on motorcycle to really get like an ego about me. Although when I do catch a little bit of the spirit, I enjoy that part of it. But yeah. Oh yeah, the Fury is still up. So there's a white Fury there. And look, that's a hell of a lot of bike for $6,000, guys. So that's on the menu to ride. Wait a minute. Okay. CBR 1000R sold. Very nice. They had a lot of bikes sell this week too, by the way. One of the Goldwing sold. So the Chief Bobber Dark. This is a hell of a good looking bike in person. And I am looking forward to riding that thing. It's powerful, good looking bike. So that one is probably going to be coming up. The 2022 Indian Challenger might make it to the party too, which is that one. So we'll see. And then what else we have here? Last but not least, so there's a 23 KTM Super Adventure that just landed. I'm kind of getting into these adventure bikes, the sport utility motorcycles, if you will. The GSX 8R is still there. My bike is still there. The Katana. God, what a good bike too. Listen, if any of y'all want a very clean, and I mean exceptionally well broken in and really loved and cared for motorcycle, my Katana is still for sale at Stubbs Cycles. It's their bike. It's not mine, but it's still there. And my God, what a great motorcycle too. So, oh, the R7. Sorry. Yeah, almost the R7, or what I should say, MT-07. Both of them are still there. So definitely some great bikes that are out there. Yeah, Skids, you can do a comparison of the KTM and the Harley Davidson Pan Am. Yeah. So I will be, if I get a chance to ride both of those in the same day, they're both going to get their own video. And then I will do a post-ride review where I compare the two. I'm going to tell you guys something though. These adventure bikes, sport utility bikes, are really getting my attention lately. I never thought I would be into those kind of bikes, like never in a million zillion years. But ever since I rode the Tiger 900, really, let me reset. Ever since I rode the Tiger 50, I've had a little bit of a different opinion of those bikes. And since I rode the 900 and now I've ridden the Africa Twin, man, I'm kind of getting to a point where I get it now. I get why so many guys are going after bikes like that. And, they offer up a great value proposition if you think about it. But with all the technology and everything else that those bikes bring to the table, they're really pretty interesting machines just in and of themselves. What they can do is pretty amazing when you think about it. The range, the giant gas tanks, all of that. It's all pretty cool stuff. Now, with all that being said, as much of a tongue bath as I've given those bikes, I don't know that I'd ever personally own one unless I could get away with using it for commuting. like a really fun fair weather commuter would be really that Africa Twin would make for a great one because it's got a DCT, that dual clutch transmission, the automatic, which is really good in that bike. But yeah, if I can get my leg over both of those two adventure bikes on the same day, that would be a pretty strong comparison. With both of those bikes being very powerful variants of that sport utility bike category. Sovereign saying the stream's looking good. Thank you very much. It's good saying, to be honest, I'm thinking about snagging a KTM 390 Adventure just to mess around with. Lots of bike for the money, very much. And you can get them for a song right now, too. Bummer about KTM. They are in some serious trouble right now. We can only hope that we get at least 1 year out of the RCR 990, that new super middleweight that they are, or that they have showcased at, I think it was EICMA. And amazing motorcycle, great looking bike, 130 horsepower, weighs practically next to nothing. Yeah, that bike is going to be a pretty nasty contender for a top slot in that category. But at what price? That's the other thing. See, the problem is with Yamaha releasing the R9, but now running into supply chain issues, which has pushed many of those, not all of them, but many of those bikes have been pushed back Q2, like to the tail end of Q2, Q3 of this year. Yeah, that's a bit of an issue, but it's Yamaha. With KTM, it's going to be a different story. Even if they release on time, the cost of that thing is going to be what some folks are estimating to be around $15,000 or $16,000. Kind of like the the new Panigale V2. Okay, a hell of a motorcycle, and you're going to pay the premium to have the privilege to own one. But you got 2 or 3 looming problems here for the KTM and for the V2 for that matter. The first problem is the R9. The R9 is going to check in quite a bit less at about $12,500. But the even worse news is that the GSXR 750 checks in for about the same money as an R9, but brings a lot more horsepower to the table, and its old school cool panache comes along with it. But the real devil in this detail is if it checks in, talking about the RCR or the V2 Panigale, at that $16,000 mark, that's GSXR $1,000 now. And yeah, you get GSXR power and GSXR reliability, bomb proofness. It's a freaking Gixxer, bro. So yeah, you've got that. Plus you start to encroach on ZX10 territory. And that category doesn't, I mean, we're talking 2 completely different worlds here. You could justify the price of the V2 or the KTM though, in that you can say, well, it's more appropriate power for the street, and you won't find yourself accidentally doing 130 or 140 plus miles per hour on one of those bikes the way that you would a Gixxer 1000. And I can understand that. And if that helps you to sleep well at night, then I'll fluff your pillow for you. How about that? Because I can tell you right now, most of the guys that will buy that bike will not be able to ride them to the limit that they think that they will, not on the street anyway. And there are much better and much less expensive options for actual track use. I mean, I remember back in the day, my GSXR 750, it saw street and track use. But we were able to treat the street like a track back then. And, you know, when you're up in the mountains, you're having a ball with one of these things. All the horsepower in the world doesn't help you. But on the street, where rideability, well, horsepower helps that along. Torque helps that along quite a bit. And I can't really say what I think about the bike yet. I need to ride one, or at least find an MT-09 or an XSR 900 in used inventory. But I can tell you this, it's going to be a lot more of the same, talking about the R9, It's just more of the same of the XSR 900. And, it's, I hate to say it like this, but it's just another 110, 120 horsepower bike. Not to say there's anything bad or wrong with that. It's just that with all the gizmos, gadgets, and doodads that are going to be on the R9, talking about rider aids, it's got a great chassis, but I just don't know that. I think what's going to happen with the R9 is that guys are going to buy it and they're going to be all lathered up about it. They're going to buy it and they're going to have it for about a year. They might, even if they're really stubborn, hold on to it for 2 years. And then they're going to slide up into a leader bike. I can almost promise you. And because that's the normal way that this goes. You'll see a ton of R9s for sale with like 1,200 miles on them, maybe 2,200 miles on them. So, that's just kind of how that works. As far as the V2 goes, a little bit different story because Ducatistas, they love their ducks. And I don't think that you can go wrong with any Ducati that you buy because they're all really that good. But the KTM, damn it. I like the KTM a lot. I like the idea of the KTM, and I really like the fact that it's a P2 making 130 horsepower, talking about a parallel twin. And a 270-degree parallel twin at that, making that kind of power. By all accounts, that engine is really strong. And this bike is going to be very light. So it's got all of these things working for it. But what I will say is this. I am afraid like crazy that bike is going to... KTM's predicament that they're in right now is going to scare a lot of people away from that bike. And that bums me out. Because I think of the three, I think the KTM is going to be the best out of the bunch. I really do. And the reason why is because it does have a parallel twin. And if you can get a parallel twin pissed off enough to make 130 horsepower in that configuration, that thing is going to be a powerhouse everywhere. Now, granted, its torque curve is going to be very, from your point of view, it's going to be very tilted, right? On the torque end of things. But it's going to be a very flat power curve, not very peaky. And I have a feeling that it's going to be the bike that, in terms of power and the way that it puts the power down, that the V2 is going to have the most problem with. But I think that the KTM is going to have the biggest problem selling. And again, price, and a lot of folks are going to be worried about dealers, in parts availability and stuff like that until we get, a little bit more better of an idea for what that's really going to look like. So, but anyway, that's my thoughts on the super middleweight class as it sits. It looks like it's taken a little bit of a mid-stride break, and we're not going to see the MT-09s yet. So we'll see what happens with that. Skid. So we're going to talk about that Pan America ST. I think there'll be guys looking at Comfortable Sport Tour with some power can be a hooligan with just a few mods. I'll take it a step further. So the Pan America ST is about a year and a half at this stage of the game, a year and a half or 2 years late. But damn, did it show up right? Okay, so 150 horsepower, and it's a little bit on the fat side, but that's the Pan America. The ST is actually a little bit lighter. It's going to check in somewhere around 15 to 20 pounds lighter than the normal Pan America. But here's the choice thing about it. It's a true road-going, hot rod, sport tourer, sport utility bike. And I think that this motorcycle is really going to be something to contend with, provided that the price isn't like $23,000. That's going to be the only downside to it. If this thing checks in over 20 grand, it's going to be a little bit of a hard sell, but it's not going to be an impossible bike to sell. It's a great evolution of the Pan America. And you're right. I think with a couple of very tasteful modifications, I think that this bike will be a riot, to say the least. But I'll even take this a step further. mean, you guys know I'm not the biggest Harley Davidson fan out there, but credit where it's due. Okay. The Pan America, if they could only translate that bike into something like the Street Fighter, which would have been the 1200 at 150 horsepower, and the Bronx, which would have been the 970cc variant. If they could translate that bike into that, that's what would be the big hit. And I think, and I'll be willing to bet, that there's going to be guys that will modify the new ST to look and act, or at least act more than look, like that Street Fighter style bike. Now, the question is, can you retrofit the wheels and the brakes and everything else off the ST into the regular the regular Pan America if you already have one? I'm guessing there's a way to do it, or there will be a way to do that. But no, that Pan America ST is going to be a very serious problem now for the Tiger 1200. It's going to be a real problem for pretty much any bike that's going to be in that $18,000 range. I mean, Africa Twin, if they can come in with it just shy of $20,000, it sits it right on top of the Africa Twin DCT model. What would you rather have? 100 horsepower Africa Twin with a DCT, or a regular clutch with 150 horsepower? Yeah, me too. So that's kind of where I'm at with this. But, you know, that being said, the A2 is a nice ass bike. I just love the aesthetic of the Africa Twin, though. It does something for me. To those of us of a certain age that remember the Paris-Dakar bikes, Skid said MT09 is the way to go. If you're loving the Yamaha CP3, that bike can do it all. That bike can do it all. That bike can do it all with the only one. How do I put this? The only caveat with that is that it's not going to make the kind of power that the which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's not going to make the power that the GSX S1000 will make. But still powerful nonetheless. Oh, Skid's saying it's just shy of 20 grand on the website. As long as there's a 1 starting that number, then that means that bike's going to be a big problem for folks. I'll tell you that right now. I mean, a big problem, because that bike at $19,000 means that it falls dead in line with all the rest of the top tier of those bikes. The Pan America ST, yeah. And in line with the competitors, BMW, Ducati, and Triumph, yeah. I mean, dude, and here's the thing, okay? Now, you're talking about BMW, Duck, and Triumph, right? Think of the dealer network with Harley Davidson. How many Harley Davidson dealerships can you get to within 30 to 45 minutes of where you live? At least one, I'd be willing to bet. How many Ducati dealerships can you get to? Well, unless it's under the same roof, probably a lot less than that. And Triumph dealerships, shoot, you already know where that's going. So even if the Pan America, even if it's say $1,000 or even $1,500 more expensive, you might go with the Pan America, all things being equal, just for the convenience of service. If you want to call it that from a Harley Davidson dealership. Sovereign's having internet issues. Bummer. Skid saying Pan Am comes with the quick shifter, doesn't need a DCT. Dude, I'll tell you something. The latest generation of quick shifters is really, really good. So I'll just say that. And yeah, you don't need you certainly don't, in my opinion, got that clutchless thing. Yeah. Okay. So, okay. So let's talk about the kind of one of the funnier things that so talking about videos on a live show is kind of weird, because it's like I'm talking about my own product. But I recently did a video. The last ride and reviews were included the Africa Twin, the Continental GT from Royal Enfield, and the CBR 650 with the E-clutch. Okay, let me just say this. The CBR 650 with the E-clutch was the weirdest experience I've ever had with a motorcycle. But even more strange was how the video has been progressing. The Continental GT took off like gangbusters, and then it stalled at about 1,000 views. I almost call it Pan America twice now. The Africa Twin has been kind of steadily cruising along. The CBR 650, it's like people put it in their watch later list and didn't watch it until a lot later. That video and the post-ride video, because the post-ride videos don't get as many views as the ride-along video, and that kind of makes sense. I mean, you know, you want to see the thing in action, just looking at me and my bald head blah, 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 about something. I mean, like, I work a lot better as background than foreground, right? So anyway, talking about that bike in the post-ride video has like half again more views than the Royal Enfields and the Africa Twin. A lot more people wanted to hear about what it was like to ride that bike. But the weird thing is how fast that took off. So thank you all very much for that. But it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird just how that video has evolved. But I got to tell you, it falls in lockstep with just how weird that bike was to ride, because I'm still trying to get over that. I'll also say this. I don't think that if I wouldn't have the CBR 650 with the E-clutch along with a group of bikes. I would have to have that, like if I was starting out, or if I just wanted the convenience of not having to deal with a clutch, I would have to just have that and that one and only motorcycle and just leave it at that. Let me check in. Let's see. Skits absolutely love the quick shifter on my SS 950. It's almost like mine is learning. Oh, speaking of stuff learning, this Saturday, GSXR 1000 is getting tuned with the new M4 exhaust. That's just a slip-on, but I have made already threw it away. I have made a modification to the factory exhaust that hopefully is going to help that thing make very similar horsepower numbers to having a full system on it. So we shall see about that. But it is getting tuned on Saturday. All things, if they work out, should have that bike being tuned, and I'll get you guys, hopefully, if I'm allowed to, I'll get you some video of that. But yeah, my quick shifter, it's almost like it's learning. It's weird. Mine on downshifts, you'll get an extra blip every once in a while, and it will bobble an upshift every once in a while. I can't figure out exactly why it does it, but it does. And I've been getting the angle of the shifter more sorted out as well, and it is exactly the same as the Daytona now, which is exactly what I need. All right. Comcast was out because squirrels were chewing on the coaxial. It's funny. Anybody having a problem hearing me consistently going in and out? Interesting. Yeah, Skids might want to close and come back. Sometimes it'll do that. Hard Rock saying, I like your post-ride reviews. It's just more exciting to be with you on the bikes. Yeah, I get that. I mean, I totally understand that. I would agree with that 100%. I will say that the ride-along videos are a lot easier to do than post-ride. Harder saying, sounds cool. Look forward to seeing the slip-on action. Yeah, it's coming up, and I'm looking forward to that. I don't know what the bike is going to put down. This is a dyno comp style dyno, so I think that's what it is. Not that there's a hub or anything, but it's an eddy current dyno. So the number isn't going to be really the sexy thing. It's just, for me, I don't even care what the number is. I just want the freaking low speed fueling fixed on that bike. Oh my God. That's if I had any complaint. If I had one major complaint about the GSXR 1000 or any of these Euro 4 or 5 bikes, is just the dead spot in the throttle, man. And I kid you not, like I can, if I'm holding on to this will be good because you'll get an idea for the angle. So let's say this is slack throttle. So this would be on throttle. That would be rolling off the throttle, right? I got to put my fingers out or it won't work. If I'm at like slack throttle or just partial throttle and I'm at low RPM, the bike, even if I barely crack shut the throttle, but still at slack, it'll kill fuel. So I can be at not totally shut throttle and it'll still do a deceleration fuel cutoff. And it'll do it at under 5,000 RPM. It is extremely abrupt. And I mean, it can catch you off guard. And the thing is that Gixxer Thal is a different animal because of how it's geared and because of how much torque it makes. You ride it like a triple almost. I mean, it makes great torque down low. And so just in partial throttle, the thing is beefy. I mean, seriously. And so you find yourself really not wrapping out on that bike too much. Anyway, there is a under 5,000 RPM deceleration fuel cutoff can be overwhelmingly jerky. And that can be a real problem in certain circumstances. So I'm typically doing, I'm typically fast through sweepers and stuff like that. That's not the problem. It's like when you're just kind of putting through traffic and you're just kind of making a turn and you're just kind of and you're not trying to really go anywhere. You're just kind of keeping up with slow traffic, trying to get where you're going. That's where that thing can be bad. And it's actually bucked a couple of times. I'm like, what the hell is that? And then it never will do it again. I can't force it to do it again. So it's just goofy little things like that. But yeah, definitely looking forward to that bike getting tuned. And while I'm thinking about it, a huge shout out to Kyle and the crew over at M4 Exhaust. So one of the things is I have obnoxiously sensitive hearing, and it's sensitive in a certain range. And these bikes will put it like right at that weird thing where it rattles my eardrum. And so I reached out to M4 because they make a really pretty can, but I needed something that would just move the sound a little bit further back. And he has a 12-inch core. It's used for guys that have their race systems that race at like Laguna Seca, for example, that need a lower dB. It's not marketed. It's just something that they offer. And I didn't know that until I just called out of the blue and said, hey, is there any way? And the guy's like, yeah, we can do it. And if you have anybody that that has a bike that has, a noise issue that they need to get around, they can do that. Okay, cool. And so that pipe comes in, it goes on the bike. It's the exact look I'm going for. It's the exact sound that I'm going for and all of that. So I couldn't be happier. I literally could not possibly be happier with that exhaust. So big shout out to those guys, Kyle and the crew over at M4 for helping me achieve that goal for that bike, which is a big, big deal. I'm also going to be up and coming for you guys that have made it this long. I will be doing a test of earplugs. So you guys know the normal, the foamies, right? I'm sure I've got like 4 or 5 sets. Can't believe they're not just hanging off of something over here. Anyway, the regular foamies, right? That's typically what I wear. But have you seen these ones that are always advertised when you're scrolling through like Instagram or something like that? These things will pop up, and it's the pop-in ear protection. And it's like a solid piece of foam with a little loop that goes in your ear. I'm going to be testing those. They didn't send them to me. I bought them, but I figured I keep seeing these things, and it's always a good idea. I always try to promote best practices when, riding a motorcycle. I mean, how to do, very, I almost said unintelligent. Well, that too. How to do irresponsible things responsibly. how to do stupid things smartly, I guess, is another way you could do it. But always wear ear protection. And bikes that I've had in the past, I never had a problem with them being too noisy. My RC51, the exhaust was way out back, just like my Daytona is, no cats or anything like that. That exhaust is loud as hell, but it's way behind you and you don't really hear it. The Bonneville, if you guys saw the sound testing on the Bonnie, I mean, that can be pretty loud, but it's in a spot where it doesn't really bother you, or a pitch that it doesn't really bother me. So anyway, I figure why not do a test with these earplugs. And so when they come in, be on the lookout. It's just going to be me going, hey, I'm going to try these things out. I'll take a set of them for a ride and let you know what I think. So we shall go from there. Oh, Siren got his new AI. Nice. The avatar. Very cool. I like it. I was going to say, maybe get a little ride along post tune. That's what I'm hoping for. Yeah. I am going to be bringing the rig. So that helmet, in other words, is going to have my camera on it. So possibly. It depends. Well, it's going to be at Cycle Gear. I don't know. I may get the bike back and then do a ride along local. We'll see. Yeah, and see, Skids, that's kind of how I am with mine. Like the Bonnie doesn't bother me at all, but the one that was the worst was the Cowie, man. That thing, oh my God, and it kind of broke my heart in a way, because that thing would just absolutely blow my eardrum out. That Brock Street Meg sounded great, but it was loud. But yeah, no, the new M4, it sounds really good. And it's lightweight too. Oh, and then somebody pointed out, and I cannot believe I did this, when I did the exhaust swap with the Yoshi pipe, I was rattling off pounds, but I was reading the kilogram side of the scale. Like, God dang, dude. That kind of sucked. Yeah, Skids, that megaphone style. And it was loud. I mean, but it sounded good. It wasn't ultra loud. It was just, it would get to a pitch. I don't know. Just riding the thing around, it would get to a pitch, and it was like, ugh. Anyway. But yeah, it's still a killer bike though. What a great bike. And the M4 on the Katana. Oh my God, that bike sounds so good with that exhaust. I'll tell you what, that M4 on the GSXR 600, that same exhaust. Oh my gosh, that bike sounded good. But it also still has the cat and the mid muffler too, which is, again, one of the things that make it sound so good. But yeah, speaking of sounding good, if you guys do get a chance, check out the decibel test. Oh, fun fact, and it didn't show up on film, which kind of sucks. So the Bonneville, I didn't ever remove the pair system on it. It's just on there. And so on hard decel, it pops pretty good. So on one of the revs where I'm holding the camera to the sound meter, this thing, put this little hat back on here. So I'm holding the camera to this thing, right? And so you see this is the only view you've got. And I reach up and I whack the throttle a couple of times. The thing you don't see is when I hit decel, it goes pop, pop, and it blew out a flame about 6 or 8 inches long. It's pretty cool. I tried to get it to do it again, and it didn't do it on the when I'm just showing the exhaust pipe. So that was kind of fun. Good times. But let's see. Oh, Hard Rock. Yeah. A Triumph Bobber for you, dude. Look, that bike is not going to be overwhelmingly powerful. My thing is, are you going to be able to fit on it? The thing you need to do is go try one on. The Bobber is a small bike. The Bobber and the Speedmaster are actually kind of small. I would say go try one on. And if you like the way that it feels when you sit on it and the foot peg position and all of that, then go for it. If I were you, if I were to buy a Bobber, because I like the Bobber a lot, if I were to get a Bobber, I would put the forward controls off of the Speedmaster because it's the same chassis. I would take the forward controls off the Speedmaster and put it on the Bobber. Yeah, at 6'2", 270, you're probably going to want to make those adjustments to that bike. It'll make it a bit more comfortable. And if you've got a foot bigger than a size 10 and a half or 11, it's really going to make sense because you're used to riding, everybody is really used to riding on the balls of your feet, realistically speaking. And what you'll have is a situation where you may cook your heels. So that's why I like the more forward controls on those bikes. Yeah, if you're 13 and a half, dude, you're going to want to put forward controls on that thing. I'm a solid 11, and it is hard for me to ride that bike without cooking my heels. But yeah, it's real important though that you try it on. And by the way, like I say, because it's the same chassis, you can put the forward controls off the Speedmaster on that bike, and the Speedmaster is nice to ride. I just don't like the Beach Cruiser handlebars. So for me, the way I would do it is just, set it up to where it's comfortable for you to ride and let it rip, because they're not overly powerful bikes. They're still 80 horsepower though, and will easily cruise down the highway with plenty of power on tap. So, yeah, hard ride. You don't want to get something that's going to be too slow. I'll put it to you like this: the Bobber is okay, and I love the aesthetic of the Bobber, but take a look at that Indian Bobber that I'm going to try to ride. That's a bigger bike, and it might be a bit more comfortable for you in general. The difference in cost, I don't think, is going to be astronomical. Well, I don't know what I don't know what the Indian costs new. I might be talking out of turn there, but I can tell you that it's important that the bike fits, and it's important that it's the type of bike that you can ride for a long period of time and it doesn't bother you to ride it. And one of the issues that I've run into with motorcycles is that you can find yourself in love with an aesthetic, and then you ride the thing and then you hate it. But you can't let it go because of how good it looks. And so I would say that, yeah, that Indian Bobber it's a bigger bike. It's a much more powerful bike. And I would say that any money that you spend on a bike like the Indian Bobber would be money well spent over the Bobber, I think, long term for you. Because, yeah, man, that Indian Bobber looks good. Let me look at that thing again. Hold on. Indian Bobber. Yeah, see, the Bobber Scout. Let me see something here. That thing is, oh, dude, 12.9. But the other Bobber, hold on, the Scout Chief. Dude, the Indian Bobber is a sick bike, dude. I'd go with the Indian Bobber, I think, before the Triumph. If you like the smaller, more hot roddy type bike. But if you like, let me pull this one back up. Let me look up this Indian again, because, dude, it's a hell of a good looking bike. But it's also, even as it's used, it's still 17 grand. No joke of a motorcycle, though. Hold on. Where is it? Where are you, you bastard? Where did you go? Another hell of a bike is the Fury. I'm kind of looking forward to riding that thing. Okay, Indian Chief Bobber. This one's now 16 grand, dude. Yeah. Let me see if I can get some pics of this thing pulled up for you. They're just the stock pics. It is this bike, though. The Indian Chief Bobber is a hell of a good-looking bike, man. Let's see if I can just... how can you help get this damn screen out of my face? It's not going to let me do it. I'm trying to get... Anyway, check out Indian Chief Bobber. That's what I'll be trying to ride. And again, yeah, it's a bit more expensive, but dude, it's a lot more bike. So I'll even tell you this. I mean, it's more bike to the point where the only way I would ever really recommend a Triumph Bobber is if you're a smaller, like a small frame guy. Like you could be maybe 5'10" or 6 feet tall, but not weigh any more than about 180 pounds at the most. Yeah, from a comfort standpoint, bro, yeah. What's up, Eric? How you doing, buddy? Good to see you, man. Sport Chief RT, yeah, that's another good one. Yeah, you're gonna want, harder. You're gonna want a little bit bigger bike, bro. Seriously. Because the problem is, and I'll put it to you like this: if you were to put that Triumph Bobber next to the Indian Bobber, the Scout, the Bobber Scout, the Triumph Bobber is going to look like 85% the height and width of that bike. I mean, I get it. It's a hell of a good looking bike, but it needs to be about 3 inches longer realistically and have the foot placement a little bit different. I'll put it to you like this. You know, the bike that I would compare very directly to the Triumph Bobber is the Rebel 1100. And the Rebel 1100 is more comfortable. I would almost go so far as to say more powerful. Better power to weight ratio. Now, granted, you don't get the old school aesthetic, of course, but it's a new school metric aesthetic, which I freaking like. So, yeah. I mean, if you wanted something that was a lot less expensive, that was still kind of small and sporty, that you might fit on a lot easier, especially now with the Rebel having the revised foot placement, and it's a neo retro bobber, dude. I don't know. Don't look past it. I know that it might not be the exact aesthetic that you're going for, but at least try it on for size. That way you'll have something you can say, well, I tried it on. You know, I'm not saying buy it. I'm not saying that it's the right bike for you. I'm just saying give it a test fit. That's the main thing. This kid saying Scouts are a little bit on the small side. They are. But dude, they're killer looking bikes, man. The latest Indians are badass, man. I got to tell you, Harley Davidson, come on, man, pick up the phone. Y'all got to get with the program, guys. They're getting stung right now. But with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. We're talking about old school bobbers on the tail end of a chat about cafe racers. You know, I'm a big fan of that genre. I know that it's not going anywhere. Royal Enfield is going to keep that going strong. All I can ask is that you keep me as far away from that new 750 Continental GT as you can possibly keep me, for fear that one of them ends up being adopted by me, like as soon as I lay eyes on it. Anyway, guys, if you made it this far, I truly appreciate it. This is just a background noise generator. It's typically car and motorcycle based. On Tuesdays, we do motorcycles, and on Saturdays, typically cars. And the show will typically go from about 45 minutes to an hour and change now. So with that, guys, thank you very much. Please like, subscribe, share. It helps the channel immensely, more than you may know, even more than I realized when it comes to subscribing. So please, by all means, it's free, doesn't cost anything. If you don't mind, hit that button. And with that, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. Get out there and do something cool for somebody. Chances are they need it way more than you know. And with that, that's a wrap. Take care.